thought she was gone. Her body lay cold, her breath silent, her pulse still. Family wept. Candles flickered. The church bells tolled for her final goodbye. But as the coffin was lowered into the earth, a faint sound echoed from inside. At first, no one moved. Then came the second sound. Louder this time, a desperate cry from beneath the lid. What happened next would terrify an entire village and rewrite what people believed about life and death. She was buried, yet still alive. And her name would be remembered for generations. It was the year 1893, in a small European village where life moved slowly, and death was treated with solemn dignity. In a quiet house at the edge of town, Anna Müller, a young woman in her late 20s, lay motionless on her bed. Doctors declared her dead after a sudden illness that left her pale and unresponsive. Her grieving family prepared her for the funeral, unaware that the story of Anna's death was only beginning. The old wooden coffin was placed in the center of the small church. Candles flickered around her still body as friends whispered prayers. The priest began the final rites, his voice echoing softly between the stone walls. But something felt off. Anna's mother thought she saw her daughter's finger twitch, just slightly. She blamed it on grief, on imagination. But then came a faint sound. A gasp. A low moan, like air escaping from the lungs of the dead. The priest froze mid-sentence. Gasps spread through the room. One of the attendants leaned closer and dropped the candle in shock. Anna's eyelids fluttered. Her fingers twitched again, stronger this time. And then, as if pulled from the depths of darkness, she opened her eyes. Panic erupted. Some ran out screaming that they had witnessed a ghost. Others fell to their knees, believing they had seen a miracle. But Anna, pale, trembling, confused, sat up inside her own coffin, struggling to breathe, unaware that she had just been minutes away from burial. What really happened that night? Was it a case of medical error or something far more mysterious? Because the truth behind Anna's death would shock even the doctors, who had pronounced her gone forever. As the panic faded into stunned silence, the villagers stood frozen around Anna Müller. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, but only a whisper escaped, dry, broken, almost like the voice of someone returning from another world. Her mother rushed forward, tears flooding her eyes, clutching her daughter's hand as if afraid she might disappear again. Anna's skin was icy cold, but her pulse, faint, fragile, was there. Alive. Doctors were summoned immediately, running through the cobbled streets in disbelief. They examined her under the trembling glow of oil lamps. "She's alive," one finally muttered, his face pale. "But this is impossible." Anna was carried back home. For days she drifted between sleep and confusion, haunted by fragments of memories that didn't make sense, shadows, whispers, a feeling of floating somewhere between light and darkness. When she finally regained her strength, people from nearby villages began arriving just to see her, the woman who came back from the dead. Rumors spread faster than truth. Some said she was chosen by God. Others whispered she had been possessed. A few even feared she had brought something back with her, a curse, perhaps, or a spirit. But Anna's own story was even stranger. When asked what she remembered, she spoke slowly, eyes distant. "I remember darkness, but not emptiness. I heard voices, soft ones, calling me to stay. And then a warmth, like someone pulling me back." Her words sent chills through everyone listening. Could it be that she had experienced the boundary between life and death? Or was it the strange medical condition doctors in that era barely understood? A deep coma mistaken for death? No one could explain how her heart had stopped, how her breathing had faded completely, or how she revived hours later inside her coffin, moments before burial. Anna Müller's case was soon written about in local newspapers. It became one of the earliest recorded accounts of premature burial, a fear that would later change how doctors confirmed death. But for Anna, the nightmare had just begun. Because even though she was alive, she would never again sleep peacefully in the dark. Weeks passed, but the whispers around Anna Müller only grew louder. What began as a miracle had turned into obsession and fear. Newspapers printed her story under headlines like, "The Dead Woman Who Breathed Again and a Soul Returned from the Grave." Reporters arrived from nearby towns, wanting to see the girl who had cheated death. Doctors debated her case, some calling it a medical marvel, others warning that it was something supernatural. Anna, however, lived in constant dread. She would wake at night drenched in sweat, gasping for air, certain she was back inside that coffin, trapped, suffocating, scratching against the wood. Her dreams replayed the moment of awakening, the darkness, the silence, the slow realization that she was buried alive. One night, she confessed to the village priest, "Father, I remember everything. I heard them crying. I heard the priest praying over me. And I screamed. But no one heard." The priest listened quietly, then told her, "Perhaps God gave you back your breath for a reason, Anna, maybe to remind the world how fragile life truly is." But not everyone saw it as divine. Some villagers started avoiding her, whispering that she had crossed the line between the living and the dead. Children ran away when she passed. Even her friends spoke less, frightened by the pale calm in her eyes. Her case reached Vienna, where a group of medical scholars decided to study it. They called it suspended animation, a rare state where breathing and heartbeat slow so much that life seems gone. But their explanation could not erase the terror she had endured. When one doctor asked, "Do you remember what it felt like to die?" Anna replied softly, "It didn't feel like dying. It felt like waiting." That sentence alone would be quoted for years in medical journals and folklore alike. By winter, Anna had recovered her strength, but she no longer smiled. The experience had marked her not as a ghost, but as a reminder of how death sometimes hesitates before taking us completely. And although the world eventually forgot her name, her story inspired one of history's most important inventions, the safety coffin, designed with bells and breathing tubes, in case someone was ever buried alive again. After the doctor's reports faded from the newspapers, Anna Müller tried to return to an ordinary life. But ordinary no longer existed for her. She moved to a quieter village, hoping people wouldn't recognize her as the woman who woke from the grave. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she could still hear the echo of nails being hammered into wood, the muffled weeping of mourners, and the terrifying silence that followed. She began keeping a diary, her only companion in sleepless nights. In one entry she wrote, "I used to fear death. Now I fear sleep." Her story spread through Europe, inspiring both horror and fascination. A German physician, Dr. Wilhelm Krauss, visited her to document her case firsthand. When he asked what she remembered most vividly, Anna said quietly, "The sound of my own heartbeat, faint, like footsteps moving away from me." Dr. Krauss later published an article titled "The Living Dead of Bavaria," warning doctors to confirm death more carefully before burial. His words led to reforms in how death was certified across several European hospitals. But for Anna, the fame brought no comfort. Children would sneak to her window just to catch a glimpse, shouting, "Show us how you rose from your coffin." Some nights, villagers left small crosses or flowers at her door, half in awe, half in fear. Years later, when electricity reached her town, she couldn't bear to sleep in darkness again. A dim oil lamp always burned beside her bed, a small, trembling light to keep the shadows away. She lived a long life, never marrying, never leaving her village again. And when she finally died for real, decades later, the townspeople honored her with a careful, almost sacred ritual. Before sealing the coffin, one man whispered, "This time, let her rest." And above her grave, They placed a single inscription carved in stone. She lived twice. Years passed, but the strange tale of Anna Müller never really faded. Doctors, scientists, and writers debated for decades. Was it a miracle or a medical mistake? Some said she had suffered from a rare condition called catalepsy, a trance-like state where the body appears dead, the heart slows, and breathing becomes nearly undetectable. Others believed her survival was proof of something far greater, the human spirit's refusal to surrender. In 1901, a German medical journal published her case under the title, Death's False Embrace. The report described how Anna's awakening led to new burial protocols across Europe, including the introduction of waiting mortuaries, where the dead were observed for several days before being buried. Inside those chambers, bells were tied to corpses' fingers, just in case one of them ever moved again. Meanwhile, Anna herself lived quietly in the village of Passau, surrounded by books and the occasional curious visitor. Her health grew fragile, but her mind stayed sharp. She never spoke of her experience with fear, only with an eerie calm. One young journalist who interviewed her in 1920 wrote, "Her voice trembled only when she said, 'I was not supposed to die that day.'" In her final years, she often walked to the churchyard at dusk, sitting beside her own old gravestone, the one prepared for her funeral in 1893. She would rest her hand on it and whisper, "You almost had me once." When Anna finally passed away at age 77, the same village that once whispered behind her back now carried her coffin with solemn silence. Her tombstone still reads, "Anna Müller, the woman who lived twice." And though more than a century has passed, her story remains one of history's strangest reminders that sometimes death can make a terrible mistake. Even after her death, Anna Müller's story refused to rest. Her case became a subject of fascination for decades, whispered in candlelit homes, retold by travelers, and cited by doctors as one of the strangest resurrections ever documented. In the archives of Munich's old hospital, her name still appears beside the note, pronounced dead, revived during burial. Over the years, letters arrived from all over Europe. Some people claim to have had similar experiences, waking inside coffins, trapped between life and death. Others wrote to thank her, believing that because of her ordeal, their loved ones had been spared the same fate, now that doctors waited longer before declaring death. By 1930, her case was featured in a London medical conference under the heading, "The Living Dead of the 19th Century." Scholars debated whether her survival was divine intervention, a scientific anomaly, or simply luck. But among the villagers of Passau, there was no debate. To them, Anna Müller was a miracle, a woman who had looked death in the eye and come back stronger. Every year on the anniversary of her awakening, villagers would place a single white rose on her grave. They said it symbolized a life returned. No one knew who started the tradition. Perhaps someone who had seen her that day, gasping in the coffin, fighting her way back to the world. Even now, local historians still visit her resting place. Tourists pass by the quiet churchyard, unaware that beneath their feet lies the woman who changed how Europe understood death itself. And though centuries may fade names and faces, one truth remains unshaken. Sometimes, the line between life and death is thinner than we dare believe.
Thanks you for watch. Every old story holds a lesson worth remembering. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe for watch and listen more old times, real stories, and don't forget,